their children's access to the internet. One may say that's pretty difficult. As I say, we're beyond that stage in one era and not in it yet with another. But this illustrates the point that I'm trying to make, that in my view, the principles and doctrine that have developed at an earlier time with more traditional media are equally applicable to the media that is available today.
Well, I'll be bringing that to another question. Her question raised one. Actually, these your younger colleagues who are advocating the First Amendment change, it's based on these kinds of things, presumably. What's happening? Is it equal among conservative and liberal legal scholars react similarly, or?
Let me simply say that the law school world is heavily dominated by liberals.
Okay.
I mean, Fox News is clearly right on that.
Oh, well.
Now, there are reasons why conservatives are less likely to go into law, to into academia. We need not get into all of that.
Okay.
But this is interesting in another way. This is the problem with your questions. They get so interesting, and they open up many things.
Your answers are fascinating.
When I came on the scene, and that's a long time ago, I graduated college in '56. This is the height of what was called the McCarthy era. This is the Cold War period, where it was the conservatives who were clamoring for restrictions on speech in order to prevent communist speech. They wanted loyalty oaths from professors, it was they wanted restrictions on membership in so-called subversive organizations. They wanted to ban the expression of subversive ideas and so forth. And so it was the liberals who were strongly defending free speech. And for an organization like ACLU, which is its membership is heavily liberal, but is committed to freedom of speech, if you will, the political and ideological objectives coincided. Now we move along, and the liberals are more in control, certainly in control of the universities, and are imposing things like speech codes. In 1988, the University of Michigan adopted a speech code. It prohibited it prohibited by word or act conduct that created a hostile, intimidating, offensive environment for minorities, women, and other protected gay and lesbian people, other protected groups. And the conservatives said, this violates our right to freedom of speech. The particular case that we brought, ACLU, decided it had to come down on the side of free speech, painful as this was for many of us. And I was going to litigate the case. I remember meeting with groups in Ann Arbor, and the African American members were saying, you can't support racist speech, much as Jewish members of ACLU a decade earlier were saying you can't support the Nazis in Skokie. And we won the case. I litigated before Judge Cohn. He's even older than I am, and he also an older line liberal on free speech. And this was, it's the same free speech. So what you tend to have today are conservatives have suddenly discovered the First Amendment. Again, I'm 20 years old. 20 years ago when I'm saying this, but the kind of restrictions on free speech that were, for example, one of the leaders of the intellectual leaders of conservative groups like the National Association of Scholars was the late Sidney Hook, who was a philosophy professor at NYU. And he wrote in the 1950s why communists should not be allowed to speak. And so now you have the National Association of Scholars saying, well, we want to be free to speak. So in any event, but today you tend to have conservatives who are concerned about universities and others trying to enforce political correctness on them, while liberals are talking about protecting gay and lesbian persons, protecting against discrimination, which can be carried out by means of speech. You had this recent controversy over a former assistant attorney general who was targeting the president of the University of Michigan student body because he's gay. In any event, this may explain the reason why academic commentators today are more disposed to be advocating restrictions on freedom of speech, while us older types want to uphold freedom of speech.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, foreign companies who have their nucleus outside of the U.S. and say they have like 1 or 2 factories here, are they afforded the same speech rights whereas a company like GM would have?
Federal law prohibits campaign contributions from foreign corporations. And I've used the word contributions very carefully. Remember that the Constitution talks about persons, and corporations are persons. So Volkswagen or Toyota would have the same First Amendment rights as Chrysler or GM. So we're not, see what we're talking though about restrictions on contributions, and those don't raise First Amendment problems. But when it comes to expenditures, yes it would. It would be unconstitutional to say foreign corporations doing business in the United States cannot use corporate funds to support political candidates. Remember, if they're doing business in the United States, they have the same interests. The transplants are competing with the domestic automakers. Okay,
Thank you
very
so
good.
much. Yeah, we thank you.